Hello, my name is Bhanu Sivakrishna and this is B SKool Erudite. Welcome. And before we go anywhere, let me tell you what this channel is not. It is not a series of lectures where I stand behind a podium and recite definitions from a textbook you could have read yourself. It is not a collection of motivational quotes designed to make you feel inspired for 3 minutes before you scroll away. And it is certainly not a place where I pretend to have all the answers. I don't. No one does. If every McKinsey consultant, every business teacher knows all the answers for the most pressing business problems, then we should be running our own businesses. Then what is this channel about? I hope it is something rare. It's a place where we take the complex, intimidating, sometimes absurd world of businesses and we make it make sense together. A little about me so we aren't strangers anymore. I hold a master's from ESCP, one of the top business schools in Europe and the world's first ever business school. Here, I also won the Europe wide EBS Great Debates. Before coming here, I worked as a product marketing and technology partnerships manager in HR tech and MarTech companies. I've been a guest lecturer at IIM-BG, ISBR, and Indian Business School. I've also written lyrics for India's biggest animated film, Dheera, during my high school. I've been a delegate at Harvard MUN, and I published poems in the Times of India since I was 13 years old. I've studied and worked in 8 countries. Why am I telling you all this? Not to impress you, but to show you that learning never stops, and that business, art, debate, poetry, and diplomacy, they all connect. That's the spirit of this channel. I've organized this channel around two simple pillars. The first is what I call the foundations of business. Think of this as the core curriculum, the concepts that power every organization, from a corner shop to a multinational conglomerate. We'll start with the most basic question. What is a business? Not the textbook answer, but the real one. A business is the art of turning nothing into something people will pay for. It's a coffee bean that starts as a seed in Ethiopia and ends as a cup in your hand, with value added at every step. It's an AI startup that raises millions and still fails because they forgot the most important question. What problem are we actually solving? We'll explore the economic sectors, why a country like the UK now has more people working in services than in manufacturing, and what that means for jobs and inequality. We'll look at the sole traders and partnerships, private limited companies and public ones. We will ask, what's the difference between a social enterprise and a charity? Why would a company franchise its brand rather than expand its own stores? Why do multinationals expand across borders, and what happens when they do? We'll go deep into human resources, the motivational theories of Maslow and Herzberg, the leadership styles of autocrats and democrats, the quiet art of delegation. We'll talk about organizational culture, the invisible force that dictates how things get really done. We'll learn why a company's structure, whether it's tall or flat, centralized or decentralized, can be the difference between agility or paralysis. Then we'll move to marketing, not just advertising, but the whole philosophy, identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer needs in a way that makes sense for the business. We'll talk about market orientation versus product orientation, mass markets versus niche markets, and the eternal question, do you build what you're good at, or do you build what people actually really want? We'll cover the tools, market research, segmentation, positioning. We'll break down the 4 P's: product, price, place, and promotion. And then we'll ask the uncomfortable question, are the 4 P's still enough in the world of AI and algorithms where a product can be a service and a service can be an experience we all feel and relate to? Maybe we need a different framework. Maybe we need the 4 E's: experience, exchange, every place, and evangelism. And then we'll talk about the pricing strategies like skimming, penetration, psychological pricing, dynamic pricing, and the math that goes behind them. We'll calculate price elasticity and the demand and wonder why some products can raise prices without losing customers while others can't. We'll build sales battle cards, conduct win loss analysis, and create sales playbooks. Because marketing isn't just about creating demand, it's about enabling the people who sell to capture it. And we'll move to operations and finance. We'll ask, what does it really mean to make something? Job production, batch production, mass production, and the holy grail, mass customization. Where do you get the personalization of a craft with the efficiency of a factory? We'll talk about lean production, just in time inventory, just in case, and why a system designed to maximize efficiency can also make you incredibly fragile. We'll calculate break even points and margins of safety. We'll distinguish between cash flow and profit, Two concepts that sound very similar but are fundamentally different. We'll learn why a business can be profitable on paper and still go bankrupt, and how to prevent that from happening. And then, once we build a foundation, we'll zoom out. We'll talk about strategy, the long term choices that determine where a business plays and how it wins. We'll use tools like SWOT analysis, PESTEL, Anshaws matrix, Porter's five forces, BCG frameworks. We'll ask, is it better to be a cost leader or a differentiator? Should you focus on narrow niche or go after the mass market? How do you decide when to grow organically and when to acquire others? We'll explore international business, why companies go global, how they enter new markets, and what happens when the culture clashes with commerce. We'll be talking about trading blocks, protectionism, exchange rates, and the strange world of transfer pricing. We look at the emerging markets and we'll ask, what does it mean for the global economy when the center of gravity shifts from the west to the east? And finally, we look at the future, the rise of AI, the shift to remote work, the growing importance of cybersecurity, the Web 4.0, the space economy, the blockchain, not as a hype, but as a real force that shapes how business is done. That's the first pillar only. Foundations of business. It's a lot, I know, but we'll take it one step at a time. And along the way, we'll meet the characters who make business interesting, the entrepreneurs who bet everything on that idea, the managers who navigate office politics with grace, the marketers who understand that a brand is more than a logo, it's a promise. We'll have podcasts and interviews and guest lectures with these people as well. And then we come to the second pillar. The second pillar is where we get personal. I call it marketing, careers, and academia and AI. Because business isn't just something you study, it's something you live. We'll talk about my professional experiences and mainly about product marketing, what it actually means to be a product marketing manager, how to go to market with a new product, how to build competitive battle cards that actually help sales teams win. We'll break down the difference between product marketing and brand marketing, the difference between positioning and messaging, between a feature demo and a story. We'll talk about partnerships, tech partnerships, channel partnerships, GSIs, co marketing, co selling. We'll explore why integrations matter more than ever and why a thriving partner ecosystem can be a company's greatest competitive advantage. We'll talk about careers, how to write a resume that doesn't get lost in the ATS, how to use LinkedIn not as a passive profile but as an active tool for building your brand, how to network without feeling like you're begging for it, how to prepare for an interview, how to handle rejection, how to negotiate your first salary, how to choose between two job offers, to have two offers. We'll talk about the hidden job market, the power of informational interviews, and why the best opportunities often come from people you already know. We'll talk about academia and research. For those of you who are curious about teaching, about research, about the PhD path, we'll go there. What does it take to become a professor? What does a research agenda look like if you don't have a PhD? How do you publish case studies, research papers, journals, position papers, and also posters? How do you get guest lecture opportunities? How do you survive the peer review processes? We'll talk about the craft of teaching, how to lead a case discussion, how to design a syllabus that balances rigor and relevance, how to build MarTech into the classroom without turning it into a software tutorial of HubSpot, Salesforce, or Freshworks, or Zoho's marketing clouds. We'll talk about AI, not as a buzzword, but as a tool, how to use Gemini and ChatGPT and Midjourney in your work, how to think about AI in marketing, in research, in education, and we'll ask the uncomfortable questions. When an AI makes a mistake, who takes accountability? The algorithm, the data, the CEO? Who? We'll talk about the tools of the grade: Google Analytics, HubSpot, Salesforce, Figma, Asana, Power BI, Python, R. We'll talk about SEO and SEM, about programmatic advertising, about customer lifetime value, and the return on marketing investment. And throughout all of this, we'll talk about mindset, about the unexpected truths of a career. The perception often matters more than reality. The evidence is rare, but the confidence is everywhere. Why? Confidence matters less and evidence matters more. And getting a good manager in your job is harder to find than a good salary. How you should choose a job that lets you enjoy your weekdays, not just survive them until the weekend. That loyalty to a company is not the same as loyalty to your craft. That the person who asks the sharp questions often adds more value than the person who has the answer. How knowledge and intelligence can go hand in hand. And that's all about pillar 2. I've been fortunate to learn from some extraordinary places: a business school in Europe, a classroom in Poland, a guest lecture circuit in India. I've built in technology marketing, built partnerships, launched products, written case studies, debated at European competitions and American conferences. But the most important thing I've learned in this, the best learnings happen when you connect the big ideas into the real stories we can live and relate. That's why this channel exists. Not to tell you what to think, but to give you a framework for thinking, not to give you answers, but to help you ask better questions, not to make you a perfect candidate or a flawless professional, even I'm not, but to help you build a career that's meaningful, resilient, and yours. So you can relish and cherish your personal and professional life. Let's learn together. Expect videos that are grounded in real problems. Expect case studies, frameworks, and a little bit of humor. Because learning shouldn't be boring. Expect me to share what I've learned, but also to point you to resources, books, and ideas and sources that go beyond my experience. And most importantly, expect a community. This isn't a one way lecture. I want to ask you questions and I want to see your comments and answers and messages. Share your own stories and challenge me when I get things wrong. That's how we all grow, right? There's a quote I love from the writer Rebecca Solnit. She said, "A book is a heart that only beats in the chest of another." I think the same is true for ideas. An idea, a framework, a piece of advice, it only comes alive when someone else picks it up, think about it, argues with it, makes it their own. So consider this as an invitation. Pick up the ideas that resonate, argue with the ones that don't, make them your own. And if you find something useful, share it with someone else in your class WhatsApp groups or with your friends. That's how learning becomes a conversation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. And wherever you are in your journey, whether you are just starting out or you've been at it for years, I hope you'll find something here that helps you take the next step. Subscribe if you'd like to come along. Join the WhatsApp community as you can see in the description and also on the scanner if you want to keep the conversation going. And I'll see you in the next video. What is business? The first video of this series.